Hey everybody, welcome back to Gleeboot. We're having a slightly different kind of content this week. I am interviewing my dad about his book, Camelot. It is, Father's Day and Mother's Day are coming up, Gleebooties. So I think we have something that might connect with, I think anyone of any age can really enjoy it, but that might really relate to some of your parents and their, life experiences growing up. So I just thought I'd share that, and we'll have a link to where you can buy the book in the description. I also want to thank Allyssa for letting me tell her to be quiet while I interview in the kitchen. So shout out to Allyssa. But you've met him before if you listen to the season 4 Christmas special, but I wanted to introduce my dad, Bill.
Nice to meet everybody. Is this what you'd call a booty call? No, just kidding. You guys mentioned Gleebooties. That came to mind.
Yeah, I do
just like a boomer trying to be funny.
I do like to specify that when I'm saying Glee booties, I think of baby booties, not butts. That's how I like to clarify. Yeah, it's a cursed name, but it's the one that we have for our fans. So it's the full title, right? Is Camelot: The Life and Times of Charming Billy?
Right.
Yeah.
And that's because that was a song my mom used to sing to me when I was a kid. I used to sing to you Charming Cully, but you hated it.
I know. I remember asking if you knew a different song.
Please. I don't know what you wanted to do. Something by Bon Jovi. I'm not sure. It's my life. I do what I want to do. Isn't that the Bon Jovi song? Anyways.
Yeah.
I did pass that on. I tried.
So this book is, it's made up of different Facebook stories that you tell, like you write long Facebook posts. So what kind of inspired you to write those stories on Facebook?
Well, it all started because when I was a kid, adults used to gather around and tell stories. Mm-hmm. And people don't do that anymore, but they do stuff online. So I thought that was my whole premise. It was actually premised by my mother's death, and we were cleaning out the house, and we found a trove of all my dad's slides, and going through them, get brought up story after story. And I remember as a kid sitting around, children were to be seen and not heard, but you sure did listen. Or little pictures have big ears. That was a famous saying. And they would just tell story after story. My mom and my aunt, her twin sister, my Aunt Peg, were just tremendous storytellers. Mm-hmm. So, and that corresponded on the time that they let boomers on Facebook. So I just married the slides and the stories. And then people tell me, you should write a book. And like a good Catholic boy, I do what people tell me to do. So I wrote a book. That's a short story long.
All right. Okay. That's a pretty fun, unique origin story. Is there a story in here that's your favorite?
When I went to kindergarten and I wet my pants.
Because you got to ride in the truck?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Get to ride in the pickup truck. It was pretty traumatic when it happened,
Yeah, but you had some space. You've had some time.
I didn't want to go by the nickname Rusty Zippers all the way through kindergarten. I did.
You didn't? Okay.
But, yeah.
It's fun because there's some stories in here that I had heard many a time, some old stalwarts like Tom going missing and you all getting candy apples.
Right. We didn't have to share them. We got a candy apple apiece.
Yeah.
The old man broke the bank, man.
It's amazing what stress can do to the wallet.
Yeah.
But there are new ones like Dan setting Anne's crib on fire.
Oh, you never heard that one?
No.
Yeah. Anne to this day sleeps with a fan on, even in the middle of winter. So
that was crazy. Oh my God.
Well, we used to have blue tip matches that you light the stove. The stove didn't have burners that automatically clicked on.
Yeah.
The gas stove. So you had these blue tip matches. And then we learned how to lit. Speaking of zippers, we learned how to light them by flicking them on our zippers of our tough skin jeans. And a habit, one sample becomes a necessity. And Dan was just, anyways. So
I guess you didn't have to tell me that one because I was scared of fire as a kid. So you didn't have to, make me scared of it. Like
right.
It's natural.
Right.
Like,
so yeah, all my purposes were to put fear in you.
Yeah.
All my stories. Yeah.
No, well, because I was an altar boy, and all altar boys are pyros, but I had a fear of fire, so it just kind of leveled out to me having a normal relationship with fire.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
We all come to our level with fire.
Yeah.
That's a story. I didn't make it in the book. Part of our job, I'm just amazed. 6 or 7 was to burn the trash. This is pre-EPA stuff.
Yeah.
And most of there's either garbage or trash. You couldn't burn garbage, but you'd burn the trash. And our job was to sit outside and light stuff on fire. Who would allow a 6 or 7-year-old to do that? But they put the kibosh on it because more and more things made it synthetic, plastics and stuff. And even in the pre-EPA stuff, we realized, this is kind of toxic, all this plastic and aerosol cans blowing up. So I don't know when they say, okay, kids don't burn, but that was part of the boys' job was to burn the trash. And I'm just constantly amazed. I never let you guys burn the trash.
No.
But back in the day, we had a lot of kids. We could miss a few,
I mean, I remember I used to flatten the egg cartons. And I used to pretend it was Jericho. Yeah. Yeah.
That's as close as we came. Your Uncle Brian would take the melting plastic, and march over to the anthills and tell me, worship me. I am your God, or you'll suffer fire and brimstone. And then he would rain, the plastic would drip molten fire on an anthill.
Oh.
So long line of twisted people. I'm sorry.
It was one of the things I really enjoyed was kind of the consistent characterization of all your siblings. Kathy as the older sister, I thought it was funny you talking about her letting you listen to her music.
That was a big deal, man. Herman's Hermits. I'm Henry VIII. I am. Rock and roll. Beatles, big British invasion, 1964. Music Nazis would tell you better, but I think around 64, 66, the Beatles were just big. Yeah. It was a game changer, man. Guys started to have bangs. Yeah. Revolution. Yeah. No more VO5 in the hair. It was a VO5, little dab will do you. Brill cream.
Oh, so like to kind of swoop your hair up?
Yeah. We just get LBRs, little white regulars. And so it like plaster your hair in place. So
you could run around and do whatever. And
right. So, yeah.
And then, Mary dragging you to school. That was a fun detail.
She was always the hit person. She was the muscle. Kathy was the boss and Mary was the muscle.
The enforcer.
Because she was my dad's favorite. So if you crossed her, you crossed my dad, your grandfather. Yeah. You didn't want to do that. So
Tom as the engineer, fixing things, you were a little more blithe than Bonnie. You didn't want to
right. That was also my travail, because I never learned anything. I would purposely screw up so my dad would, get out of here, go play. Oh, okay.
Well, I think it's funny because people would say, kids these days, they don't want to pay attention and learn. But I think what this story kind of shows is that there were always some kids that wanted to pay attention and learn, and some that didn't.
Right. And it's usually, as you could tell, your older brother,
Yeah. Yeah. And I didn't have the patience.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So I got to learn everything the hard way, just like you.
We have Brian being the troublemaker. That's been a consistent characterization.
It's still to this day.
To this day. And his candy bank. That was a fun detail. His candy bank, where he'd
finance. He could last all year from one Halloween haul, just lending out candy and charging interest on candy.
How was it interest in candy you had to give him back, or nickels?
We had to give him back. I don't know if we had to give him back money or I'll gladly pay you for a candy bar today. If pay back Tuesday for a candy bar today, that penny candy store. So if you had a few pennies, you could just go pay it back. But he was always thrifty when it came to his own self-gain. He's a generous man now. Don't get me wrong. He's a very generous man, but he knows where his pennies are going. Put it that way.
Yeah. Bridget as the picky eater.
Yes, that was my godson, because I never starved to death, because we never got seconds. That was like, wow, seconds. But if Bridget didn't eat it, if you waited long enough, hey, can I get that? Okay.
I mean, we encountered used to do that with Caitlin. Yeah.
Yep. So you know the game.
Mm-hmm. Danny stealing all your money. Yeah. So he took your first communion money, was buying people candy. Was that the story?
Yeah, we always had it. We first communion money. We put it in a drawer. I put it in the sock, so I thought it was secure. We shared sock drawers. That's what I was thinking. But my mom noticed all of a sudden he had all his friends, and he kept going to Dominic's and back. Wait a minute, he's not even 5. Where's he getting the money? And that's what he was doing. He was treating all, hey, on the house, fellas. And so my mom busted him. I had no idea, as per usual. I had no idea that I was getting ripped off, but my mom figured it out.
I thought that was funny.
Yeah, I could afford to send you to college, but my first communion, it was pilfered, man.
Yeah.
It's
gone. This was something I didn't, how Ginny would always help Grandpa with the animals, with finding fledglings and. Right.
That was, to this day, well, my grandpa's passed, but I mean, to this day, she's got a soft part in her head, soft part in her heart for animals and creatures. They would always try to get robins would fall out, get kicked out of the nest, and the mother wouldn't get them back, so they try to nurse them back to health. And we used to have a rabbit, and sometimes with rabbits, their teeth grow crooked, and they'll starve themselves to death. I don't know if I should tell the story. So I remember my dad. It's an act of mercy.
Yeah.
Take the little bunnies and twist
so they
their
wouldn't
neck.
Slowly starve to death.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, it sounds terrible, but he's a real nature boy. I mean, there's always I think there's a story in there where he took me out the woods and he tried to teach me, if the zombie apocalypse came, what trees there's like trees and stuff that are edible.
Yeah.
And where to find it and which animals to watch. And I would have none of it,
Yeah. All this, lost knowledge now.
Right.
But, I mean, I do remember, there were always pictures of birds and books about like naturalist books in their house.
Right. I think he gave Caitlin one of his birder books.
Really?
Yeah, I think so, because she had interest. He was in used to belong to the Audubon Society. You'd be driving down the road with him, and he'd pull over because he was doing pigeon surveys, and he'd count the number of pigeons underneath the overpass.
Yeah.
And he was one that told us about blue jays and how they're the jerks of the bird world. I don't know if that's in there.
I think, it is. It is. Yeah.
And
but you, unfortunately, your prepper skills became, some smarties and dum-dums for Y2K.
Yeah, I know. The world changes. I think of my dad and his relatives. That was their thing. They talk about where a good blackberry patch was, or a good blueberry patch, or this or that. Out in the woods. That it's so funny how we transition away. Before they weren't subsistence farmers, but pretty much. Well, and it wasn't. It's not. I think people think, oh, that happened in the Industrial Revolution, right? But this was only like a couple generations ago. Right. Yeah. My grandfather, your great grandfather, was the first one to get a job and not make his living off the land. Yeah. Same. Same way with. With my mom's dad. He was a fur trapper.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And then he went to go work for the car companies.
Michigan.
On the assembly, yeah. In Michigan, traveled to Michigan. So we're only two generations off the land, people.
Yeah.
So, anyways,
before we get into, there's some history about my grandparents, your father, I found really interesting. I do want to mention, you said about Anne, she was the baby. She was happy as long as everyone was getting along.
Right. And you can relate to that.
I can relate to that. And that's definitely how Anne still is.
Right. My sister Anne is so much like my dad's mom, my Grandma Callaghan.
Yeah.
Very much like that. I think Grandma Callaghan was the youngest too. But just wants people to get along.
No, she was the one who you're telling this story. I had never heard this story before about the Depression when my grandfather, your father, was a little boy, and people would come and ask for food, and she'd be like, "Oh, can you move those rocks for me, and I'll feed you."
Right, because they and my dad were, why are you doing that? And she said, because they want to feel useful, and why take their dignity away from them by just giving them a handout? Was her their story, because they lived right along the railroad tracks. And my dad, during the Depression, he'd walk along the railroad tracks and pick up coal to heat the house, the coal that would fall off. So anyways, there's a lot of people on the move then, and they'd come by and they'd be knocking on the door looking for some food.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, it's also interesting, she was definitely a smart woman. She didn't let them in the house. She had them sit outside,
Right. You don't want to be a sap. You don't want to be a sucker, but you want to be human. You want to, and you can't know, you don't know these people.
Yeah. But that doesn't mean you still shouldn't treat them with human dignity,
Right.
I think sometimes people, get lost between these two extremes. But you can still be smart and safe, but also, treat people with that respect.
Right. So,
yeah. Because Grandpa died, was I 5 when Grandpa died? 4?
You had just turned 4, I believe.
Okay.
He died in November of 98. October, can't remember if it was October. Right. Yeah, he was just shy a few days of his 70th birthday. So you were 4. You were born in 94, so you would have just turned 4.
Okay.
In 98. You're the one that told me, "Don't worry, Dad. That's just a statue. That's not him." At the wake, and when he's in the casket.
I mean, I had seen a lot of Chronicles of Narnia. So
okay. I didn't know that. I just.
Yeah, because I do remember him, but I feel like I know him a lot more after reading this book.
Thank you. That was part of one of the reasons for writing it. Also, just to talk about that stuff.
Yeah,
because I know stories of my great grandfather and grandfather and grandmothers from people just telling stories. I never knew them. They passed away, or I was small when they passed away, but I knew stories about them and what they had been through. So
that is kind of an important and lost part of culture. People think of like Day of the Dead, how they would say you have the 2 deaths. It's when you die and then when people forget you. Oh, and people keep track of their ancestors and their stories to keep them kind of alive in a way.
Mm-hmm. I think it kind of foggy as they go back. I mean, there's the story, it's not in there, where during the famine, someone had the address in Fenton, Michigan, and they came into Detroit and they walked all the way to Fenton and did a jig when they got there. And I only remember it for Teresa's, 99th birthday, we're driving up there and thinking, wow, this is a long way to walk. But they'd fled Ireland. I don't know how they got to Detroit, but then they walked all the way to Fenton, and we're happy they found their relatives.
Yeah.
So,
Connor has been sending me these podcasts on the famine. And I knew this from before, but how the population of the island still hasn't recovered.
Right. The Callahans got lucky. We blew out of there before the famine came.
Yeah.
And so anyways.
Yeah. So you're talking about Grandpa having cancer and you were a mess, and they're like, oh, your son should drive you. And he's like, yeah, that's a good idea.
Oh, when was this now? I can't remember. I don't remember that.
I think this was the first time he had cancer.
Oh, you're right.
Yeah.
Right. When I went in, that was pretty, yeah. Like, how did I get picked for that? You know, I'm not the emotional rock, you know, that everyone leans on, you know?
Yeah.
So I guess God has his ways. So I would be the one when he got the announcement. And that was on Ash Wednesday. I think it was Ash Wednesday.
Yes, I do remember that detail.
Yeah.
And then
we went to, go ahead.
You went to Mass, yeah. And then you were talking about seeing him in the hospital with the date and how you were kind of cold with him. At first it threw me off because I was like, I was alive when Grandpa had cancer. Who's this lady that you had a date with? But then I was like, oh, this was the first time. And how the relationship never recovered.
Right, because I was kind of a jerk.
People have different responses to death. And there's a lot of really light and fun stuff in here, but I thought some of that stuff was really interesting. And then talking about the miracle, I think this was the second time he had cancer, of the person who helped him into the house, and then you turned around and he was gone. They were
gone. Yeah, I was there. This is just reports from, and I'm not sure I got it totally straight because never let the facts get in the way of a good story. But Kathy was there, and bringing my dad in after he got the news, which is, I'm sure it was a real sucker punch in the gut,
Yeah. But there's some things that, he said that seemed interesting, or you were talking about fighting that kid and how the kid was laughing when you were beating his head. I'm sure it's probably like, it seems so violent, but it's one of those things where like, I'm sure it probably wasn't as intense as it feels when you're a kid, like from the outside looking in, but like when you're in it, it's the war, right. How he kept laughing and your dad said, some people, what did he say that I think I copied, I wrote
somebody got hurt so much that you can't hurt them.
Yeah.
I think it was intimating something that I would totally have no idea what that was. And now I do. You know? And the kids don't need to know everything. Yeah. That was just enough to know. So.
Yeah. That was a darker moment, but I thought it was really, so a kernel of wisdom. But then also the story of your grandfather, right? Yeah. Or was it your great-grand who's helping your dad plant a money tree?
Oh, that'd be his grandfather. Yeah.
So that'd be your great-grandfather.
That'd be my great-grandfather. Yeah. He was not an English. Yeah.
He was not an English speaker.
He was not. English was not his first language.
Yeah.
So. Anyways, I thought, he told me that story and I thought that was funny. And so I always, because if I ever have grandkids, I'll do that. Hey, let's tear up this dollar, plant a money tree, we'll be rich.
I thought that was really funny. And then how he came back from the grave to apologize. And sometimes we think, because Aunt Ginny lives in that house now, that house is still haunted. Mm-hmm. The ghost comes and rearranges, neatens up the drawers. Really?
So I don't know if that's him or not. I mean, he did apologize. Maybe he
moved
left,
on. Yeah. That's how it works according to Ghost Whisperer. So.
Right. So we have that good authority from
Jennifer Love Hewitt.
Yeah. Right.
So, but I don't know. I'm not sure if I heard you ever tell the story of Grandpa being in the car when you were driving.
No, I don't think I haven't told. I think I didn't tell many people that story. I think I just wrote it for the book,
Yeah.
So that's kind of a weird one, like, what?
But if I remember the story, he didn't really say anything.
No.
He was just there, which, fits his personality.
Right.
You mentioned that there was silent. He was usually silent. Then there was when he was silent.
Yeah.
It's funny because you're like, well, what is that? But like, especially as a kid, you can feel the difference.
Right.
And there's a reference to Callaghan low talking. That's a long tradition.
Right. But now that I have hearing aids, I'm trying to break that tradition because I can't hear anything.
I know. Well, they did it to your mother too. It's like, what are you saying?
Yeah.
And you're talking about. I did like the detail of how he brought frog legs home because he didn't like tuna casserole.
Right. That was. Where do you get frog legs these days? That was a big deal. That was exciting. It was something different.
I mean, that kind of, that was you grocery shopping growing up. You're always grabbing calamari and stuff Mom didn't put on the list.
So, yeah.
I think we weren't allowed to go shopping together because I would just say, sure.
You would egg me on. Yeah. I don't know if you ever ate it. Did you eat the calamari?
Yeah, I liked calamari.
Yeah, because I told Cully, it's calamari. It's for you, named after you.
And then this part at the end, it almost made me cry how Kathy said, I just lost my daddy.
Yeah. Well, she's always captain responsibility. You forget that she's human. She's a girl. She's a woman,
Yeah.
And that was a big deal. Yeah. Mm-hmm. That was pretty sad.
A lot of these notes, though, about you as a kid, I really related how you had to remember right and left. You had to think about which hand you would color with.
That's always my nightmare. Someone's going to ask me for directions, and I couldn't tell them what was right and left because I had right, left. I didn't know. I had right, left confusion. Yeah. But yeah. So that was
I have it too. I have to think of the dance studio.
Right. We should have started our own support group, start a fund,
And then how coloring came with a soundtrack until art school.
Yeah.
I was a loud kid too. So
yeah.
I wanted people to know how much fun I was having.
Yeah.
And then how you were coloring, how you decided to improve the vestments.
Right. Because that was a big deal. For some reason, the whole color theme struck me as in the Catholic liturgy. How they changed the vestments and what they meant, and I really got into that. But I think I could use it 2,000 years, little improvement. So, and that was that story.
Yeah, you were adding your own colors. I thought that was funny, and I did that stuff like that a lot as a kid. Because the color thing really stuck with me too as a kid. Kids are visual. Not all kids, but some kids. Why don't you just put me in the washing machine with my clothes on? Save time. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I hear it. Yeah, it froze up a bit. Yeah, I always wondered why not. I think they did it in the cartoons. You didn't realize that you would drown and harm would come to you. It's just with kids. Time going quick. Don't waste my time. Let's do this.
Let's see. There. Your love of hockey and trains, well established as a young guy. I love this line, transubstantiation is a hard concept, but the concept of cake is food that is good.
About my first communion.
Yeah.
Cake was a hard commodity. We didn't have a lot of sweets. That was that was a big deal.
Before the advent of high fructose corn syrup and just mass production of sweets.
Right. I didn't think about that. Now I got to go back and revise the book. Yeah.
Your dad said you can't be both. Some people are lookers and some people are larks. You're a looker, not a lark.
Oh, I remember that. When there's a lot of stuff, I was writing it down because I'm thinking I'm going to forget this.
Yeah, it was about the play, the Christmas pageant, I think.
Oh, okay. Oh,
You were a farmer,
right,
yeah.
Right. Yeah, okay.
And they're like, you can just lip sync.
Just move your mouth. Don't sing.
You know, I connected with. I still do karaoke, but you know, I always when I choose a song, you know, I choose it for a performance. You know, because no one's listening to it for my voice.
Right.
They want a song everyone knows.
It's one of those things we used to entertain ourselves. You know, I guess it was karaoke, but the whole school, the whole neighborhood would come to these things. The school would put on a pageant and the whole neighborhood would be there. You know, everyone lived within walking distance.
Yeah.
You know,
I mean, it's like, you know, I remember going to community theater productions and it was fun. Like they're doing Little Mermaid and you have like every child in the county in like a shark costume singing under the sea. You know, it's fun to see kids do stuff.
Right.
I didn't know this, that your art class at Marygrove, the one that you bartered instead of getting a bike, you got art classes.
Right. That was, some of the decisions I rue to this day, but you never know.
But I mean, I think it paid off, even though the report card you found later said mediocre.
I know. Why didn't my mom tell me? I could have been a mid-level bureaucrat, retired, you know, by now. You know, they said mediocre talent. Who knew?
Brutal.
Yeah. Well.
And then, you know, if you were my friend in high school, you were probably a weirdo. I thought that was a funny line. Yeah.
I didn't know. It was true.
You were going to be nice to people because of everyone was mean to the new girl because she didn't have a cootie shot. She's giving everyone cooties and she was crying.
That was middle school. School. It was 5th or 6th grade.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was traumatic what they did to her. And I guess you have to include me in on it. You know,
kids are bandwagoners. I was an
anti-vaxxer. I got the cootie shot, you know.
Yeah.
And kids are so mean. So mean.
I know. Sometimes I think
when everyone complains about their kids were mean to me in high school, I thought, how many kids were you mean to? That's the curse of my older life. I remember that stuff. And I used to carry this chip on my shoulder, all the kids that were mean to me. And now as I get older, I'm thinking, I was a jerk to that kid. I was a jerk to that one. Hey, listen, people, no one was.
It definitely comes back to you. You know, nobody's perfect. And I think people say, kids are so mean these days. It's like, kids have always been mean, you know, like, because your brain isn't developed. You don't have all the empathy. You don't quite understand.
You just think about yourself, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think, you know, that was a joke on the show 30 Rock. Tina Fey's character thinks she was so bullied in high school, or she's this kind of lovable nerd, and then she comes back and everyone's like, you're here, oh my gosh, like you were so mean.
And
then let's see, you were afraid of Frankenstein in your closet, but you didn't know how you had seen Frankenstein. No,
I don't think I've ever, but you know, they used to have these the Legion of Decency and the church paper would have these ratings. My mom would religiously go through there and see what the movies were rated. And she would not send us to go see a movie like that, Frankenstein. So I don't know how I knew, but I knew. And I think it was just a hat box, you know, the flat. But, you know, as a kid, overactive imagination, you sure it was Frankenstein coming to get you.
He got you and you fell off the bunk. The top bunk.
Yeah.
So before you had bunk beds, you all shared one bed, right?
I can't remember if we shared one bed or two beds. You know, it was that little roll over, you know. You ever see Monty Python, Life is it Life of Brian or Meaning of Life, Monty Python? Where they show the Catholic family and just the kids, you know, after one after another. Medical experiments for what, you?
Because I was looking up. So you were about like 7 or so when they ended the Hays Code for movies.
Okay.
Which is the industry guidelines that were kind of prohibited profanity, nudity, too much violence, or sexual persuasion. Yeah.
Right.
So that was a big change in cinema.
Okay, yeah, and that's, like I said, they had it in the church paper. I don't know if they did TV shows or just movies, and they, they'd rate them. My mom was very, on top of that. My older brother Tom was a music Nazi, and my sister Kathy had the cool stuff, but my older brother Tom, he had the big stereo that you had to take a test to even touch. Yeah. And he had a lot of stuff, Smoke on the Waters, Led Zeppelin. That was his era. I just had my bed and the air above my bed. That's all I had.
I'm surprised that wasn't in the book, that sentence. Because I've heard that one before, that you had your bed and the air above it.
Yeah.
And you were talking about you tried dancing on the table and you fell.
Oh, we used to stack these 45s and had record player, and we used to have us Robin Seymour's Swinging Time. So we recreate that in our basement.
Yeah.
And we were dancing on the tables, and I fell.
Is that when your kind of your fear of blood materialized because you were fine? And
my fear of blood was before that even. I don't know what it was, but I always had a fear of blood. So yeah, that was very traumatic. It wasn't traumatic when I did it. It was just traumatic when people are telling,
Yeah.
Because it's in the back of my head. I think I still got a bump there. That's why I can't go the Kojak look. Mom says no.
I do remember when I was growing up, the neighbor kid split his foot open, and you were like, oh, and then you realized the mom was even more scared of the blood than you were, so you'd have to get it together.
So we had to wrap it up. We had to drive down to Troy Beaumont. Yeah, that was pretty. I still have not nightmares, but that was pretty traumatic. Like, how did he do this?
Well, because he was running around barefoot outside, which we were then never allowed to do.
Right. Well, yeah, that's why. You'll split your foot
open. I mean, the story it scared me. I didn't want to.
Yeah.
So then I think those are all my notes about you, I related some of the stories about Army men. Let's see. There was a girl that you would walk to school with on opposite sides of the street. Was that a true detail or was that exaggeration?
No, that's pretty true. Pretty true.
Yeah.
Very true. Yeah. Yeah.
So did you ever actually I assume sitting on opposite sides of the theater on the date was a joke, but yeah.
Well, yeah, that was an exaggeration.
So you did go on.
It would have been a cool thing to do, but never let the facts get in the way of the good story,
I thought that was a funny detail. And then, so how your crowning achievement was, being a May crowning page.
Right. That was the glory of my youth.
And how you had cut out bread and do fake masks.
Oh yeah, that was right. That's probably why I got picked. Man, they were grooming me but I was always mesmerized. Yeah, by the liturgy and all the bells and smells and the gold and the glittery and pomp and circumstance. So I recreated that in my garage at home.
A homegrown cult leader.
Yeah.
I thought that was a funny detail. So then there's some.
That's hard to do, man. You just took a lot of work.
Kids are funny. You ask them to do something for school, and it's like, oh, this is so much work. But for whatever weird project they have in their head, they'll.
Yeah, you got the time and patience to do it.
There are some funny stories about Grandma. You mentioned, I think this was when you were either your first communion or being a May crowning page. You were going to the barber, and she.
My first communion, because my grandma was a hairdresser. She used to cut all our hair. Of course, back then it was just number 2, buzz cut. Wasn't. Somehow we had to go to the barber because it was a big deal.
And there was a dirty magazine or something, and Grandma, she didn't have to say anything. She just had to give him a look.
Yeah, I don't know exactly what it was. I just remember, when you're a kid, you're kind of clueless. Yeah. It could have been just as simple as like maybe a sports, but they didn't have it then, but a Sports Illustrated type swimsuit issue, which would have been scandalous back then. That would be we think of that as softcore. That would have been hardcore. So I think it was probably something along those lines. The Police Gazette, you know. I don't know. I just remember there was some kerfuffle. Yeah, I remember the look. It was probably with the look, but I didn't know it worked on adult men, you know.
There was this line, you know, Betty Callahan was keeping conspicuous consumption at bay. I remember learning about that in college, because the concept of conspicuous consumption and how, you know, TV is always trying to sell us stuff, like especially reality TV, like, oh, this is normal to just buy all this stuff, you know, and that was not Betty's approach to life.
Yeah.
And I didn't know this detail. So she kept track of every soldier in your town that went to war, or in your neighborhood.
Well, in the neighborhood, yeah, she'd write them letters. She was a big letter writer.
Always was, yeah.
Yeah, always was. And so she'd send them letters, and they would send them back, and she would read them after we did have a Grace After Meals. And I can't remember when we started it, but then after that, then she would read these letters that she got from the boys that were over there. And she batted 100%. They all came home. Yeah. You know, I don't know how well they were mentally from that. Oh, this is during the Vietnam War. I don't know if people would know Vietnam War. That
and how the letters kind of gave you a different war or view of the war than the movies did.
Right. I mean, I that's not in the book, but I remember we had to write letters, part of a school project, write letters to the soldiers, and we wanted to know how many guys you kill. Can you send us a bullet? Yeah. You know, because to us, war was like the movie. They used to have a TV series, Combat. Vic Morrow, Sergeant Vic Morrow, Combat. And so that was all fun and games to us. We had no idea what it was, but mom knew. Her dad was wounded in World War I, and so she knew what was going on.
And she got them all home. You know, that's just she was writing them letters, and she was always a letter writer. She always knew people's birthdays, and you know, she never missed one.
It's a skill I don't possess.
I know. I know, but she never missed one. Like, I mean, she didn't always spell my name right, but I always got something for my birthday. You know.
Right.
She was always on top.
Right. She had 27 grandkids. I mean,
and she kept track. Yeah, she did. So. She kept track of all their birthdays and all her friends. And it's a lost. I always think of that as a lost art, you know. And,
right. And all my cousins too. All her sister's kids. So it's a lot of people.
You know, I liked this section, Blessed Are the Fussmakers. You know, how she would always bond with these people, and how that woman was dying, and she was like, oh, she just needs a fuss made over her. You know, that. Right.
That was just a word of wisdom, a little pearl of wisdom that I got. You know, life is rough, but sometimes, you know, you got to give a care for somebody. You know, it's not going to cure them. No, it will not cure them of cancer, but it's nice to.
Those interactions are meaningful, and you know, this is something I started as a running gag with the young adult group at church, the Mary or Martha. You know, I can't remember me and my friend Gabby. I was being like, oh yeah, we're Marthas.
Yeah, right. That was my mom. Always was a big fan of Saint Martha. You know,
she was part of the Veronicas, is what you called, not the girl group, but the women that would like do the funeral luncheons.
Funeral patrol, I used to call it. You know, they get a call out, and each had their dish that they made, and so at a moment's notice, they could have the funeral luncheon all ready to go. And then it's based on Veronica, who wiped the tears from Jesus, and during the crucifixion, all based on that. Not in the Bible. Isn't that in the Bible?
I don't think so. No,
Veronica's not in the Bible. Right. The Surimon or whatever it's called. Supposedly it still exists.
Isn't that the Shroud of Turin?
Face. No. There's a little napkin that went over that she wiped his face with. Has a name. Supposedly it's in Spain.
Okay. Yeah. Now, I did love the line about, you know, she was putting her hands over her face during communion, and you're like, she's not paying attention to me, the apple of her eye. What's going on? Are you crying?
Yeah.
So now this is, you claim to be grandma's favorite. Is that a true claim?
That's a true claim. Yeah. That's true. Yeah. I don't know why, because she didn't like men, but she liked her grandson. Well, she liked me. I don't know if what she thought about Brian or Tom or Danny, but maybe because I talked to her. I would talk to her.
Yeah, you don't usually have a problem talking to people.
Right. So I'm a lot like my mom that way. So she liked me. So
okay, so that's it. We verified it. The hard-hitting journalism.
Story. Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, all the details I knew grandma a little better than I knew grandpa, but all the details you provided, they seemed very fitting, with the kind of person she was, who really cared about people and kept track of people, and very giving person.
Very complimentary.
Yeah. I loved Sister Doug. I thought that was a really funny character. I mean, she's a real person, but
right. I don't know if that, and that obviously that's not her real name. I mean, I belong to the Facebook group for the grade school I went to. Someone there would know her name. I can't remember her. I think it was Sister Mary Martin, and that's from Martin Porries. I'm not sure, but it was always weird because a lot of the nuns would take men's names, like Sister Moore Dennis, Thomas Moore and St. Dennis. Like, okay, they were, because in heaven there is no male or female. So when they took the religious names, sometimes it'd be male names, and sometimes just like there's some priest, Father Francis Mary, he takes Mary. So that was just, kind of a, wow, they're throwing me a curveball here.
But how she would.
So I just called her Sister Doug as a generic bow down to that
she would tradition. Read you the apocryphal stories of Jesus's childhood. Oh, that was such a funny detail.
How he'd make clay pigeons and breathe life into them, and I don't know if she ever told us one where he lightning bolted to death kids that were picking on him or something.
And then the green privilege. She made all the kids who were Irish.
I remember that day. I felt so sorry. I think there was one Lebanese kid or whatever, and
he had to class.
Yeah, just sit there. What happened? Yeah, 80% of the class got up, and
that's some great comedy there. But she just seemed, but you mentioned how she took the time with every student, regardless of their background. She gave them attention and time. And
but there's 60 kids in that classroom, and her reputation was every kid would come out of her class being able to read. And that was 60 kids, and I had dyslexia. Yeah. I mean,
but you were in the Baby Jesus
not
group.
That I knew it.
The Baby Jesus reading group.
I know. As not to brag, because we were supposed to be humble. But I'm going to turn you into lightning bolt you.
And then I did love that's great Aunt Dorothy, right?
Right.
I thought she went to Oz. Yeah. I thought she went to Oz. Like, I thought that movie was about her childhood, and now this was her grown up. Yeah.
Oh, well, yeah, you could say that.
But did she really call Bloody Marys Bloody Lizzies?
Yes, she did. And gave me the history lecture. I got that.
Yeah, I'm her. Like, so this is genetic.
Yeah, it's genetic. Yeah.
Like, anyone who listens to the podcast probably knows that that's probably come up more than it should in a podcast about the show Glee. And then.
Right. Yeah. Well, like, who invited that kid to the party?
And then
you can blame me for that, and blame Aunt Dorothy.
I love the story of, so Grandma made Grandpa cookies. This was before they were dating, or they were just kind of, and then he took a while to get back to her. So she was on a date with somebody else.
Right. It's kind of they had a pretty good way to date back then. Because going steady was a big deal. You didn't date and then go steady. You dated a bunch of people. And then the next level was going steady. So you knew a lot of people. Mm-hmm. And I think you could make a better decision, where now I think we tend to, connect too quickly.
Yeah, I mean, that was something my therapist, I remember, he was always telling me, date multiple people. Don't just, okay, I'm dating one person, I found one, done. Like, you need to find out, what works for you,
Yeah, right. And so, that was an interesting story. My grandmother used to, can't think. Aunt Dorothy used to like to tell that story because she was trying to make
drama. I thought that was funny. Aunt Dorothy loved fireworks, and I do think that fits with her personality. You could see it in any picture of her. She loved to cause trouble.
Right. I mean, she locked my Aunt Jenny, which you never met her. She locked them out, and Jenny was at the front door going, "I'm the oldest. You have to let me in." Locked her out of the house. My grandmother's gone, and she was supposed to be in charge, and she got locked out. Anyways.
Yeah, so she let him in because she loved the drama.
Yeah.
So you mentioned someone named Mrs. L in it. I don't remember who. L?
Mrs. who?
You called her your other mom?
Oh.
I was like, who's this? I don't know who this is.
Yeah. Well, that was a buddy of mine's mom, and she was a character. And that story about the Waterford crystal. And that she always would say, you marry a woman and those are Waterford. And then at that Christmas dinner, Mom says, "Oh, did you notice we're using the Galway pattern as opposed to the Waterford pattern or Lismore pattern?" In fact, Mrs. L wasn't from Lismore, but her husband was from Lismore. But anyways, and I couldn't tell, but Mom knew. And then that's what made me think of that story, because her son had married somebody and said she couldn't tell the difference between Waterford crystal and a beer bottle, So,
and I thought it was.
So I knew I did good because Mrs. L would have approved because I knew someone who married someone who knew her crystal.
Yeah, I did. I also, the story about your babysitter, and talking about her funeral. I don't know why. Maybe it like really struck a chord. It just felt.
Right. That was very traumatic because up until that point, not her funeral. I was at her dad's funeral. Was the one that's the first time I ever knew a person that died. Yeah. So that was, and they used to do 3 days, 9 to 9, or I don't know, it was all day. I remember walking up to the funeral home and just, there's tons of people there. And it wasn't just, now what do you have a couple hours? It was a marathon,
Yeah. Well, I mean, we could talk about how people's work schedules kind of keeps them from doing community events, not events, but like that community solidarity that we're all isolated in our working for the man that we can't.
Right. I mean, that's kind of the theme of the book too, that we're kind of isolated and we weren't always isolated,
I just thought this was funny. The kids debating Superman or Batman. It probably was more fun than the movie they made about it. I mean, I never saw that movie, but I heard it was pretty bad. But yeah, those were my kind of the stories that stuck out to me, the characters.
That you're talking about John F. Kennedy was assassinated. And the next day we're debating, this is Santa Claus.
Yeah, you're talking about Santa Claus and then how they're just the older boys would always debate these things. Yeah.
You're right. Okay.
I think when I was a kid, it was Batman versus Spider-Man because Superman wasn't as big.
Right. Superman. And we used to have a TV show, Superman. That was, we leaped tall buildings in a single bound. That was a big, so he was the first multimedia hero, Superman. So he was a big deal.
And you mentioned having finding a Supergirl comic and having a crush on Supergirl.
Right. I know we're getting all Freudian here.
No, it's just, I thought that was just a funny detail. Right.
It's, I put that in the book. Don't have to repeat the line.
And I do remember I thought it was funny you're talking about the box and how you like getting a big box was like a big win.
Well, the conspicuous consumption, people started getting refrigerators. So they have these big boxes, because 60s was the epitome of height, probably biggest, best economy that would ever exist in the world and will ever exist in the future, So people could afford these refrigerators. And so people get these big boxes and they put the big box out on the curb. And that was tons of playtime, man.
I mean, in some ways kids haven't changed because I remember boxes being exciting. Cats still love boxes at least. Right.
Yeah. So that was a big deal.
This detail you talked about, there was an empty lot that you would all play in and dig in, and
it's called the field.
Yeah. And you thought it was as big as the prairie. And you looked back at it.
Right. And it's only like 20 by 20 square feet. I remember one of these Facebook meetups. I met the guy that lived right next door. He told me, well, his dad had the contract. There used to be a gas station there, and he had the contract to tear down the gas station. But they never built. They were going to build something, then it never did. So it's just this empty field. It was a field, you know. It's our close to nature.
Yeah, city kids.
We got. Yeah.
I mean, I remember we had that dent in the backyard in the Atlas house. Like I called it a hill, but it was really just like a slant. We'd go sledding on it.
Yeah, so it's kind of like the same thing. You thought it was that Mount Kilimanjaro, and I thought this was the Great Plains. You know, you go on Google. I remember as soon as I heard about Google Maps, I went on there and looked at it. I think it's still no, it's all fenced in now. But I'm thinking, man, that's small.
Yeah.
How do you think it was so huge?
Yeah, so, and I thought it was funny how you were talking about how your mom had eyes everywhere with all the moms.
Right. Everyone knew who you were, who you belonged to, and what you were supposed to be doing. Yeah.
So I guess do you have any kind of closing things you want to say about the book? I think, I liked the stories and the characters and this world that, it was different than what you were seeing on TV at the time, right? It wasn't just,
Right. But Leave It to Beaver was pretty accurate, except for the part about dressing up before, Mom always had a pearl, necklace on, and they wore a suit and tie, for meals. If you ever watched Leave It to Beaver,
was that accurate? That wasn't accurate?
My dad didn't have a suit and tie when he went to work.
Oh, that wasn't accurate because
but it wasn't accurate, but it was sort of accurate.
Yeah, I mean, I heard June Cleaver, the actress, I think Barbara Billingsley. I can't believe I remember her name, but she wore pearls because she was insecure about her neck. Oh, and it became like a symbol.
She set the bar high, man. Set the high.
So yeah, I think readers will find, it's like it's just sweet, to look at this childhood and look at the characters and it doesn't make life wasn't easier or harder. It was different. It was just different, and everyone had all these. The generations before had all these stories to get them to this place, and the generations after will have all these stories. And sometimes you need.
Right. Many hands make light work,
And it's sometimes you need to stop and take stock of what things were like and remember these stories because, that's what the world is. Right. It's just a series of stories.
Right. The nice thing was on one of the Facebook groups for the grade school, someone wrote in and I didn't even know her. And she wrote something really nice about the book. Like I said, well, you don't have to write something nice. You're not related to me. I mean, that's
a pretty good recommendation. So even if you're not related to my dad, you will enjoy the book.
You'll like the book. Yeah. So that was kind of nice. That was nice to hear that, that they got it. They understood what it was all about.
Yeah. I think there's something universal about growing up. We all do it. And it's different for everybody.
Yeah, hopefully we do it.
Yeah. It's different for everybody, but I think there's some things that people can, connect with. It's a very human story, so I think that's what people will appreciate.
Right. I mean, you guys will probably be. It's a trilogy, and Return to Camelot will probably be.
Oh boy! I was quoted in this book.
Right. So that's why you're having to push it.
My quote about revenge and Mean Girls. Yeah. And that was in relation to Brian when he stored the snowball in the freezer.
Right. He's the king of revenge. Best served cold.
All right. Well, do you have any other things you want to say about the book or?
No.
Buy it. Yeah. We'll put a link.
Put a link. It's worth it. I enjoyed writing it. I have had a wonderful childhood, and everyone likes to complain about their childhood, and I got nothing to complain about.
Yeah.
So I want to let that out there. No complaints.
Yeah. Sometimes you need to.
It's unusual for a Callahan, but
sometimes you got to hold. I was thinking about this. You can't hold on to you can process the bad stuff, but you don't need to hold on to it, and you can't. But you should hold on to the good things.
Right. You don't want to get Irish Alzheimer's, forget everything but your grudges. I think that's in there somewhere.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure.
You're talking about that my family's been in America for centuries, but we still have a grudge against the Queen of England.
Yeah, I know. What's with that? So
yeah.
On that note,
all right.
Thank you.
Oh, go ahead.
Send me a link. So I'll post it.
All right. Yeah. So
my son, the hard-hitting journalist.
Yeah. I mean, I did take one radio broadcasting class, so
that you go. That's all you need. You got your bona fides.
But yeah, thanks, Dad, for taking the time to chat with me. Next week on Gleeboot, we will be talking about the 101th episode, which I just watched last night and has a lot of terrible songs. So sorry about that.
Okay.
But check out my dad's book and tune in next week. Bye.
Bye.
Gleeboot.